Hi, this is Rob.
This is Silas.
And this is Raouf.
And this is another episode of GraeyZone Movie Night. We watched Knives Out, and this is your spoiler warning if everyone wants to...
Yes, please do not watch this unless you've watched the movie first.
Yeah, this is a whodunit film, which leans heavily on whodunit.
Exactly.
And
we will explicitly be talking about it as though you had watched it. So
there's no way to otherwise, so...
It would be a very vague, short conversation. So,
with that, please, Raouf, why don't you start us off on this?
Yeah, so just a brief description on the film. Knives Out was directed by Rian Johnson, who most famously, recently, directed...
Destroyed, you mean.
Yes.
Not directed, destroyed. The second to last Star Wars episode.
Yes, The Last Jedi.
Yes.
So, but it's a shame that that's what he's known for now, because he also directed Looper. It was a great film.
oh my god, I love Looper.
That was a pretty good movie. That was a pretty good
He directed Brick before that, and he also directed a few episodes of Breaking Bad, which includes Ozymandias, which is the third to last episode, which is widely regarded as the best one.
That was the only odd fact I knew. I didn't know he did Looper, but I knew about the Breaking Bad episode.
I haven't watched it, and I know I'm bad. I should have watched Breaking Bad years ago when it first came out, but
It's really good.
This guy has a great pedigree outside of The Last Jedi. No, I don't know anything.
We can
about
blame
The Last
Disney
Jedi.
for that one.
Yeah, let's.
well, we're not talking about that.
Yes.
Knives Out.
Yes. So it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars. So it did get a little award ceremony play. I think Daniel Craig was also nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance as Blanc.
You mean CSI KFC?
The thing is that he plays James Bond, right?
Yes.
And when I was watching the movie the first time in theaters, I was sitting with 3 other friends. We looked at each other and we were like, what the fuck is this accent?
So it's a weird call. Have you ever seen the ERB with James Bond in it? Epic Rap Battle of History?
No.
There's, it starts with the English Bond, then Austin Powers, then I believe the English Bond gets cut off by him as James Bond, and one of the lines is, why don't they cast a Bond who's actually English?
So that's. I think that
He's got that dumb Swedish accent right here.
Yeah, I know, and that's all I could imagine was him attempting a British accent, attempting a Texan. What did you say? Armpit of Nebraska.
Armpit of Kentucky.
Armpit of Kentucky.
And those fucking eyes, man.
Steel blue.
God.
Looks right through you.
Piercing, as they should for a detective.
They copied him right from The Last Jedi. They took the lightsaber color and put it in his eye.
Thanks, Brian.
Like last time, and I think this is how I like to analyze films, because I think it's the way that makes the most sense. But again, I've watched this film before this. This is their first time.
Yeah.
So again, I'll ask you guys gut feeling reaction, and then we can work backwards to explain it.
Okay, I'll start. Gut feeling reaction. I thought it was a really good movie. Not a great movie. I did see through some of the holes. No pun intended. The holes. Especially right at the very beginning when the nurse, what was her name?
Martha.
When Martha didn't have the counter drug for the morphine.
Loxapine?
Yes, whatever it may be. I thought that was a little suspicious, and I knew that it was already going to be foul play when they went through that whole scene. That being said, I thought it was pretty good altogether, and it definitely had me itching for the final scenes to be revealed.
I'd say it was a great whodunit movie. Some of the writing was a bit it was a bit goofy.
Yes.
It was goofy. It was definitely
goofy.
I felt comedy-esque. Yeah, it was like a dark comedy or something. Only thing I can say that I was like, this is obvious, and I did guess it, and I don't know if you guys heard me. I did say that the labels were mixed and he was fine.
I did hear that.
Yeah.
I did hear that. Yeah.
Because it was strangely obvious, even though it wasn't obvious. I was like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And then I also called that it is just suicide at one point. But that was like a good hour into the movie, so it's not like I'm some fucking 500 IQ. I guessed the whole ending of the movie, because I was still wrong about the ending.
The funny thing is that I watched this with Rami. He was one of the guys, and he's practicing to be a nurse. Yeah, shout out to Rami. He's learning to be a nurse, right? And he mentioned to me that if she actually put 100 milligrams of morphine into this guy, he would have been dead on the spot.
Yeah, he would have died immediately.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot of fucking morphine.
Yeah.
30 milligrams of morphine in a pill form is enough to put you on your ass.
Right.
Let alone an injection. Let alone
Straight
100
to the
milligrams.
bloodstream, right.
yeah,
That
so
pumped right to the heart, and the heart would have exploded.
I thought that was interesting.
I think you just kind of die.
I don't know the terminology behind it or how it would happen. I'm no nurse. But I definitely agree that there's some stretched points there. But it's Hollywood.
Yeah. So I think part of the reason why I recommended the film, and we'll get into the deeper aspects in a bit, but just on the surface of it, part of the reason I really liked it was we get a lot of crime films nowadays, right? We got a lot of crime films,
We do.
but the thing is, so many of them take after what I kind of call the Scorsese school of crime,
Which is?
where they're really dark, they're really gritty. A lot of things are just kind of understated, unless it's the violence, which kind of gets ramped up.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was a lot lighter in tone. Like, it was more whimsical, so to speak, right?
Right. There wasn't that much
Yeah,
action.
actually, I was kind of thinking while we were watching it, I like the colors were quite whimsical.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
the whole visual appeal of it was kind of
colorful. It was,
colorful. Yeah, it was vibrant.
It was vibrant.
Yeah,
Every-
that's the word I was looking
Yeah,
for.
every aspect of the film, from the visuals to the music, right, to the performances, to the writing in general, it was refreshing for me to watch a film that didn't a crime film that didn't really take so much after the really dark and gritty.
Well, yeah, it reminded me of like a performance that you would see in a theater. Like
It reminded me of a school play.
It did.
It reminded me of a very, very well done. Obviously, there's no school play I've ever seen as well done as this movie.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of that. It had like the arsenic and old lace feel to it.
Yes. A little backstory. We did perform.
Theater dweebs. Lights guy.
So that was just the surface level part of it. That's part of why I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you got, like, was that good for you guys?
I will say it was refreshing to have a different change of pace when it comes to a crime film. I know what you're saying, and I know a lot of people who love that gore, that darkness when it comes to a crime show or movie.
Scorsese is a mastermind.
I was going to say,
To be clear,
It's not. I'm not saying
But-
it's not.
one of
lot-
my favorite movies of all time is The Departed.
yes, but a lot of the people who take after Scorsese don't really do it as well as him.
No.
They do not, no.
And it feels kind of just like too saturated of a market at that point. And so to see this, like Knives Out was definitely like a Clue style.
I don't know the rating on this movie, but I feel as though it was almost like light enough that you could take kids to it. Not kids, but like younger people.
Younger kids, absolutely. This is definitely like a
oh my god,
like a young adult.
The coloration and the vibrance reminds me of the Great Gatsby remake.
Oh yeah,
The whole feeling of the movie kind of reminds me of the Gatsby remake.
I definitely agree. Even though it was set in today's day, I kind of felt like it was pulling back into.
Well, it's the mansion.
It was the mansion. It was the vibrancy in the color, in some of the colors. The guy's Chris Evans's sweater and scarf. The scarf.
So it is PG-13.
Oh, okay, that was right. I didn't know if it was R or not.
I thought I heard some F-bombs.
I thought so too, actually. So,
They say shit a lot.
Yeah.
but okay, that's the appropriate rating. That's what I thought.
Well, again, they only had one scene of blood.
Yeah.
Really. So, and that was heavily muted by the screen time and the distance that it was in. So,
There's two other aspects, and this is where it'll be slightly deeper, I feel, is the whodunit plot, right?
right.
So Rian Johnson prides himself on sort of twisting conventions, right? I mean, that's how he justifies The Last Jedi, is that he was deliberately twisting
talk about that.
conventions. But in this case,
Twisting my ankle on that one.
if he's twisting the conventions of the whodunit genre, I think the twist here is that there's almost two whodunit plots
Yeah.
in a way,
Right.
because you find out the exact scene of murder.
I think it was, because I checked my phone and we pulled up the tab, I think it was just about an hour into the film. They tell you it's a 2-hour movie.
No, I think it was before then because you saw her flashback.
No, I think it's like 45 minutes an hour.
We'll have to check that later. But
Regardless, it's early.
Yes.
It's before the halfway point.
Exactly. It was before the halfway point, and it was at that point that it became less of a whodunit and more of a how is
Getting
she
away
gonna,
with murder.
exactly.
Yes.
How is she gonna get away with it? Because
And then it's back to whodunit.
Yes.
right, and so like I kind of saw that little somersault happening, and I was like, oh, like someone's like still tampered with the evidence. Someone's still controlling it from behind. I thought that could have been played up a little bit more. I felt like there could have been more of that, but then it was also a 2-hour-long film.
I like at the very end of the movie, she asks the detective, Marta, the nurse who thought she killed him but didn't, she asks, how soon did you know that it was me? And he looks at her and says, I knew the second you stood in front of me that you had something to do with his death, because she had the blood on her shoes.
The slight little pin drop of blood.
Now,
right on the
mind
left.
you, that's a stretch.
Well, yeah. No, I just like that line.
Yeah, no, yeah, but
We're
I mean,
talking
from
about-
his perspective,
Yeah.
it's like blood could be from many things, especially just a speck of it.
Of course.
And that's another part of the film that I like is the character of Benoit Blanc.
but no.
He sort of straddles the line of being Sherlock Holmes-esque and a totally incompetent detective.
Yes.
That's the incompetence. When he's in the car listening to the music, talking about the donut
Yes.
hole with the donut hole and the hole in the hole in the donut. Yeah, I was like, wow, he's just an idiot. But then you get the big Sherlock Holmes moment at the end, and you're like, he's still kind of an idiot.
a little bit, just a little
See,
bit.
that's the thing is that he, throughout most of the film, what he does is mostly babble.
Yes.
And gives himself the illusion
gives
of
himself
being
an air,
really
yeah.
smart, and he explicitly says it at the end, is she's a lousy murderer. She literally hands him the evidence,
Yeah.
as far as she knows.
Yeah, and he says,
And-
we deserve each other.
Yeah, because he doesn't actually figure out much of anything.
No,
but then
that's
again, he unwittingly brings along the murderer with him.
Yeah.
And she actively erases evidence and tampers with the crime scene. So there's that part of if she wasn't with him, they when they were watching the VHS.
Yeah.
You clearly see, oh, that's really suspicious.
Very.
But she, burns the cassette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, she erases it with the
yeah.
magnet.
You would have also seen Homeboy driving back. I forgot his Hugh.
Yes.
What was
or
his
Ransom.
Ransom, yeah.
Chris Evans.
I'm going to call him Hugh because I'm the help.
They're definitely two idiots made for each other, and it plays into that whimsical part of the film. The whole aloofness of
Right.
both sides.
I feel that it can be frustrating for audiences when there's a Sherlock Holmes super detective who
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
just snaps his fingers and figures everything out. But it's also incompetent if you're an audience member and the detective is really incompetent and you're sitting there I already figured it out.
Right.
Yeah,
This guy gonna figure it out. So he
I think that was
rides
a really
the
good
line.
balance, yeah.
There was
Really well.
definitely a line that he didn't cross. He tightroped across it. I was gonna ask, did he ever reveal the toxicology report? He did.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, it was
right.
normal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
So that's why he called off the whole her confession.
I didn't hear it. Maybe I wasn't paying attention to that point, but I knew that was part of it because if he switched him and then she switched him back, then he would have gotten a normal dose of things. So, now let me ask you this: because she thought she was giving him the wrong dosage of morphine, and because she didn't give him the correct thing to negate those actions, do you think that she is, and now this might be a moral question, do you think that she is responsible for his death?
No, because...
The thing is, you gotta think, he committed suicide to get away from the fact that
She didn't
killed-
have to commit suicide.
He didn't have to,
If
no.
she could have just called the ambulance like she tried to,
Right.
he would have been okay.
And Blanc also makes the point of it wasn't an accident that she gave him the correct medicine because she can still tell, despite the labels, which one was the right one.
Right, and you kind of saw that too when in the very beginning you kind of saw the yellowish liquid versus the clear.
So she still did the right thing.
She did the right thing.
To Rob's point, she did the right thing trying to call the ambulance, but she kind of got intimidated into doing
he actually, when you listen to...
Who? The main guy? Humphrey or whatever?
Harlan.
When
you listen to Harlan when they're in the room together in the flashback, the way he talks about it like he switched the labels, which is obscure. If you listen closely, he's like, now what if, he were to do this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He would probably just be better off dead anyway.
Right.
He kind of like bullies her into not calling the ambulance.
I feel like that was one of those dead ends that we were talking about last time. That,
false flags.
False flags, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like that was one of those false flags that Ryan was putting in there.
Well, he makes the point of, I'm a mystery writer, so this is greatly interesting to me on a personal level. And we can also see he's kind of an eccentric person.
Yeah.
But at the point where he hangs up the phone, it's like, don't call it. Don't do that. That was a little bit suspicious. I agree with you on that, Rob. I feel like that was definitely a little suspect. But I don't know. I personally feel like she was not indirectly responsible for his death.
I know, I stand by the detective's call in the film is really can't blame her for much.
That's very true. It's very true.
So there's that aspect of the film of the two layers of whodunit, and you're thinking, just when you switch into gears of, I'm watching her get away from it, you realize there is yet another layer of whodunit. So there's that part. And I will say the screenplay is like Parasite, what I mentioned about Parasite last time, is it's very tight. There are so many callbacks to previous lines. There's no wasted scene or wasted line.
No.
And you could see it in the most obvious one I feel was when they kept referring to her as coming from a certain country.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where you're like, oh, haha, they keep saying it wrong.
Another thing that I think is good on their part, and they did well, and some movies don't, is every time they ask her to recount the story, we already know what happened because we already saw it happen. They don't recount the story on screen for us. They just, one of them was the detective tells her she can tell her part on their way back to the mansion. Some shitty films will show you that, but they just panned over the water and then they were at the mansion.
Yes.
Right. And then
there was a lot of instances of that where she already
earlier in the
part.
film when he was talking, she was talking to Ransom. When he was like, "You're gonna tell me everything," and then they kind of cut.
Yeah, to some other action. That's like you said. There's no wasted time.
Right.
None.
And there's slight alterations here and there. I mentioned the country one. Another one that I don't know if you guys caught was when they're recounting early in the film how they were celebrating the birthday.
The cake, who was feeding her the cake.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could see the one couple by his side the first time. The second time, it's the different couple.
Yes.
Or when they have that scene in the middle-ish of the movie when they're talking about Trump, I assume. And at the beginning, or the first time they recount the story, it sounds a lot more cordial between all of them. The second time you realize they're in a big argument.
Yeah.
And not only do they not treat the Martha well, it's a very subtle thing, and I read about it. You can see one of the dads hand her his plate.
And I noticed that, and as though she were the help.
Right, because that's not what she does there.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And,
But she's like, oh, it's the brown lady that's here, so I
Right.
assume she's here as a...
yeah, and to add on to that, you know how in the very beginning when they were like, oh, we welcome Martha into our family, we're so gracious. And that scene where that one guy, I forgot his name, was extending his hand out to her to come in and join the room.
Yeah, you see that again.
You see that again, and what it was is a racist debate.
Yeah, they're trying to get her to get in on the immigrant conversation.
Yeah, so I guess we can... That's the second prong of the film I'm going to mention. This is going to be touch and go. Depends how far you guys want to follow this sort of logic.
All the way to the murderer,
as long as we keep it under an hour, we're Gucci. Right.
So, well, it's less the length and more the content. But basically, the reason I brought this film up when we were talking about Parasite last week. These are both films that have a more whimsical feel, but are actually about pretty sinister things.
Yes.
The second thing is a discussion on class in a way, right?
Another one about capitalism and such. Or are we talking more about class?
This is actually like straight class warfare.
Yes.
Right.
And this one I feel is really explicit.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
It's about class. There's also some conversation about immigration, right? Mm-hmm. So actually, that conversation that they have in the film is like, oh, you know, all these immigrants are coming in illegally and they're doing it blah blah blah, right? And then he mentions hardworking Marta here did it. Her family did it the right way, and it turns out that they didn't necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But regardless of that fact, she was still a hardworking citizen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was like providing all these services and she was doing her job really well, right?
Yes.
Well, she was making a living. Well,
Yeah.
Eventually then, provided for her family.
Well, yeah.
Entire house and property.
There's that little glimpse of, we talk about undocumented immigrants in that way, but then the movie's sort of like, but they're still doing that work.
Yeah, he says this is a great, hardworking citizen, but unbeknownst to him, her family is
right. But that doesn't negate
that
the hard work.
Yeah, she's a hard worker.
So there's that aspect of it, right?
Subtle
and she like
throw in there.
She he tries one of them, the one who looks like Mark Hamill.
Yes, so much so.
Tries to intimidate her about it later because, like you were saying earlier, or both of you were saying, they're like welcoming her in, but the second the tables are turned, Knives Out come out.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Knives come out.
Immediately. But I don't want to dominate too much. What are you guys' thoughts on that part?
I definitely agree. I see exactly what you're saying, and I thought that was it was really like in the very first half before they mentioned the will. Right before Marta is named as the person to take all of his property and money and everything. Mm-hmm. Before that happens, they're all so happy about Marta, and they're so like, "Well, we want to be there for you, right? We want to." And they came to her. They're like, "Listen, we want to provide for you and be there for you," and they wanted to help, right? And I think that was, I'll get into what that really means later. The second half of the film, after the will is read. They all start to turn on her. Even Meg, who's like, I just want to go to school and, my family, my mom's broke and blah, 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 blah. They all try to manipulate her because why? Because now she has all the money. And they wanted to help her out, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that this is that class thing that we were talking about earlier. They wanted to help her out as long as they had the more money.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They wanted to be like, we'll provide for you. They wanted to look so sweet and nice. But the moment she got all that money, they're like, all right, no, that's unfair. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely a nod towards class separation.
The thing I want to say that I call back to Parasite, I don't recall it being as dramatic, and I didn't pay as much attention as I should have. But in Parasite, you talked about how the poor were always below, and the rich were always above.
Yes.
In camera shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also their physical location.
Throughout the film, I think Marta was usually on the same floor. But at the very end, when she has all the money, they make it very clear she's on the terrace of the house, while the rest of the family is outside on the ground looking up to her. And she holds a mug that says, "My house."
Yeah.
Yes. It's also the first thing you see in the film.
Right.
Yeah, they really stratify like the difference between them.
Right. So I will mention, before I move on, is even when they were trying to be nice to her, you can catch little subtle things. Of course, like I mentioned, the countries, right?
Yeah, it's like an ego trip for them. Like, we're helping out this poor,
Ugandan, Brazilian,
immigrant from X country.
Paraguay.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's like when some people, and obviously I'm not saying everybody who donates to charity is like this, but some people donate to charity just to feel good about themselves.
Yes.
Right.
And when they talk to her, sometimes you get that feeling like, we're gonna help you, and Harlan did so much for you, and it's kind of like arrogant in a way.
And they also mention about the funeral, right? Is that all of them tell her, "Oh, I wish you could have been there, but I was outvoted."
Yeah.
But obviously they couldn't have outvoted her if everybody wanted her there.
So either they explicitly didn't invite her or they forgot.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're just like, and then they see her again. It's like, oh shit.
Oh,
We gotta say something about
she's
that.
here. That's right. Right to her face, though. They're so nice. And then behind her back, they're so evil.
Welcome to the real world, jackass.
There is like an insinuation of, and this is where the content gets deeper a little bit, is it has a lot to say, mostly, again, you could say against conservatives, right? In terms of that immigration discussion. Right. It doesn't have great things to say about the college girl who gets called an SJW.
Well, it's showing the both sides of the board, right? Both extremist views. You got the Nazi on one side, quote unquote, and the snowflake on the other, right?
I don't know. I don't think the film is like giving it out 50-50 necessarily.
No, I think that doles it more towards the Nazi, of course.
But where I was going with this is she's explicitly marked as the liberal one amongst them, right?
Right.
But Rian Johnson makes the point of a lot of these performatist sort of progressives will very much still have knives out.
Definitely.
When push comes to shove.
Yeah, because she had her knife out to get the fucking money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the only real difference is that she's a lot more apologetic about it. But at the end of the day...
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much you apologize, you still did the act.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, it doesn't have great things to say about that performative aspect as well. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what I like about the film as well, is it will not age well. I feel a lot of that dialogue won't age well.
No.
Like when you get called alt-right or an SJW, that like 20 years from now, people are like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Right.
But in the moment...
It's a movie of its time.
Yeah.
Definitely a movie in today's day.
Another thing I liked that we talked about last time was favorite quote.
Oh, yes.
I wish I could remember the one that just ties into our podcast name, but that's not the one I'm going to use. The one that I'm going to talk about is I really liked the line about the will reading.
Which was?
He says something along the lines of, a will reading is like a theatrical event of a tax return.
Yeah, theatrical production of a tax return.
Yeah. And my dad did not have a will reading, but I've been to a will reading.
Yeah.
And it is pretty much just that. Everybody's sitting around to hear how much money they got, and nobody's ever happy about it. So I thought that was kind of funny. Like, I thought it was a nice little quip. There were quite a few in there that I liked. Another one, while you're looking up the one we're looking for, unless I steal this from someone, was I liked the one about the book. That they talk about this book, I don't remember the title of it, but they say, oh, I remember that. And she says, but I haven't read it. And the other guy says, well, neither have I just know the title.
I mean, there's a lot of great little one-liners in the film, right? Like, a lot of the profound ones don't stick out to me immediately, unfortunately, but a lot of the quippy ones where LeBlanc's like, oh, the little Nazi child masturbating on the toilet, and you're like,
reindeer, yeah.
That's the other ones like jerking off to dead deer outside. There's a few like that where I was like, damn.
I wish I remembered the book one better, because actually I think it was kind of profound in a way that a lot of people will pretend like they've read shit.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. The rainbow one is like, oh no, I didn't read the book, but I like the title.
Well, yeah, and he actually explains the title very well and what it has to do with his career, but I just found it interesting. Do you have the gray line?
Yes. Yeah. All right. So our all three of ours favorite quote was
he's talking to the eldest lady.
Yes, is Benoit Blanc. The complexity and the gray lie not in the truth, but what you do with the truth once you have it.
There you go.
Boom. That's the entire premise of this.
and before that is he's talking to the mom of Harlan, who must be 150 years old. No, she's probably about 100. 115, 120?
Nobody knows.
Anyway, nobody knows. And he's basically saying, I know you got something to say, and even if you can't say it, I'll figure it out.
Right.
And he actually does kind of use that. He uses the ransom your back again.
Right.
Yeah.
Ransom your back and then ransom your back again.
Yeah.
See, again, that's just like everything ties together so well in the film.
Yeah. I don't know. I like talking about quotes, so.
I like that quote.
Anything?
I was just going to say one last part about sort of the film's deeper themes.
Yeah.
Is it has that bit about immigration we talked about earlier, but there's also the larger conversation of America's getting browner, so to speak, like statistically.
Yeah.
Yes. What is it?
And
compared to all the minority races, the white people are becoming the minority.
yeah, and you see that film almost kind of details that shift in a way.
Yeah.
And how people, like...
Don't react well to it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see in the coming years how that is actually dealt with.
How the Browns take away the whites' inheritance. To put it bluntly, but rightfully. I mean,
they explicitly say, oh, this is a country of immigrant. Like, one of them say, like, oh, if it was a bunch of white immigrants, you wouldn't say shit. And she's like, no, I would say...
I don't want the Swedes and their Alpines. I'm pretty sure that's the exact line she uses.
Yes, yeah, no, they're wooden shoes, I thought.
Yeah.
Even though it's the Danish with the wooden shoes.
But the film very explicitly says Marta earned her keep because she was the only one that was working...
Like, actually working hard.
And
you
heard at the very beginning.
Yeah, she says, he didn't hire me as a nurse.
He just wanted a friend.
He just wanted a friend.
Yeah.
I was a nurse originally, but 15 hours to full-time. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So she put the work in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And he confided in her. You know?
Yeah.
Out of all of his children, he confided in her the most. So, and he made the decision to take everyone out of the will and give it all to Marta. Mm-hmm. And I also liked when one of the sons was talking to, I don't know who was talking to who, but they were like, "Oh, but this is my father's house," and then Benoit Blanc was like, "What do you mean? He bought this from a Pakistani
State agent, yeah.
I thought that was interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's one of the parts of the film that people that might go over their head.
Yeah.
So I'd like to point that out as well. I don't know how much of this is intentional because, unlike Parasite, the director hasn't gone on record as much, at least as that I saw. But
it's harder to go on record when you're not the winner of everything.
That's true.
Not as many people are asking questions.
Right.
Exactly.
And they probably still have the sour taste of
The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Should have been the last movie. But this was a good movie. I'll give him that. Stick to these things. You know, I don't think...
He probably will.
Anyways, closing thoughts on the movie. Rob?
Don't have any in particular. I would say go see it. It's worth
hopefully you already saw it.
Yeah, if you haven't,
go watch it again.
Yeah, go see it again. It's worth your 2 hours. Go see it and actually think this time. Some people just put themselves in front of a screen and fucking go blank.
Right. Look for all the little things that are hidden behind it. You know? My closing thoughts are: I thought it was a decent movie, and all the little nods here and there to class separation and social structure were really nice. And all in all, though, it was still a whimsical film, and it definitely had me interested, intrigued.
Like I said about Parasite, I love films that have a message that they kind of have on their sleeve, right? That is still kind of like an explicit, powerful message, but still manage to be an entertaining film on top of it, right?
Yes.
Where the message reinforces the plot, and the plot reinforces the message, right?
Right.
And it's like whimsical. It's kind of breezy. It never feels like it's dragging on too much.
Right.
Right. And it still has real pathos in it. The scene between Harlan and Marta when they think that she killed him. That's amazing acting.
Yeah,
and you get really like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So it's still a film that has like genuine emotion in it.
Cool. So this has been GraeyZone Movie Night 2.
Join
Join us maybe next week when we watch Jojo Rabbit or Frozen 2. We haven't decided yet.
I don't think Frozen 2 is out yet.
It is.
It is?
It's been out for a long time.
No. Not in the theater, but like to buy.
It's definitely out to buy.
I thought we saw on Amazon.
Yes.
Really?
So,
Okay.
Jojo Rabbit or Frozen 2. This has been Rob.
Raouf.
And Silas. And you've watched movie reviews. Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, and comment. Let us know what you think. And as always, until next time.